The title of this meeting, Mr. Chairman, will a Conservative government deliver on Europe? I think the answer is very easy. Under David Cameron, no. And so with that, I suppose, we could all just retire to the bar, which is what I normally do. But if I can just indulge you for a few moments, I think the evidence is very clear. I remember being on Eurostar one day with Dan Hannan. I'm sorry Dan's not here. I said, Dan, I can't believe it. I've read in the paper this morning that you're backing Cameron for the leadership. I said, surely David Davis would be much more to your way of thinking. And Dan said, Nigel, I'll tell you why I'm backing Cameron. Because he has made the one promise on the European Union that is deliverable. He's stood up and he's clearly said that he'll take the Conservative Party out of the ghastly federalist EPP, and he'll do so within a matter of months. That's why I'm backing David Cameron. That's why many, many Eurosceptics in the Conservative Party left David Davis and supported David Cameron. Well, what's he done? He's ratted on it, hasn't he? They haven't left the EPP. They're as firmly ensconced as they were before David Cameron became the leader. Oh, but there's some promise that after the European elections of 2009, then they're going to leave the EPP and set up their own group. Well, I'll have a £10 bet with any man or woman in this room that it simply won't happen. He'll rat again.
I'll take that bet, Mr. Farage.
That £10 is done. That £10 is done. Now, what I need here... My dear chap, you will. In fact, we'll up it to 50, shall we? Well, we'll start with that. Clearly, I need a bookies clerk. Any ex-bookies clerks here to take down the bets for me. It will not happen. He's ratted once on this, he'll rat against on this. And just look at the CFP policy. You know, for years at your Tory conferences, there was the remarkable John Ashworth of Save Britain's Fish, who was battling and battling and battling to get the Conservative Party to change its policy on one of the most ruinous aspects of our membership of the European Union and one of the greatest man-made environmental disasters on the planet. Do you know, in the North Sea now, we're currently throwing back dead over 70% of what we're catching. We've lost over 100,000 jobs in British fishing and British fish processing since we joined the common market back in 1973. And after years and years and years of John Ashworth bravely trying to get the Tory party to change policy, under Michael Howard it did. And it promised that an incoming Conservative government would unilaterally take Britain out of the common fisheries policy, restore our territorial waters and give our industry a chance. What's David Cameron done? He has abolished that policy. And he said that we must negotiate from within to get a better deal. It reminds me of that wonderful cartoon that Matt drew years ago on the Telegraph. And it was at a time when I think William Waldegrave was negotiating a fisheries deal. And it showed a fish inside a trawl net talking to a fish outside the trawl net. And the bubble caption, literally, was, generally, I find it's better to negotiate from within. And that just about sums it up. So on the common fisheries policy, Cameron has ratted on that. And what about when it comes to a referendum? Well, Simon mentioned earlier the difficulties yesterday between the Hague position and the Cameron position. All I can say about Cameron's position apropos a referendum is that he has been consistently equivocal. Nobody actually knows what he's saying. Although he did say, on the Andrew Marr programme yesterday, he said the Lisbon Treaty is alive and well. Well, as long as you're around, old son, it certainly is, isn't it? If he was genuine, if he really was a Eurosceptic, Euro-realist, if he really believed that we should be governing our own country and not having much more than a trade relationship with our European neighbours, he has the power. Given his lead in the polls, he has the power to kill the Lisbon Treaty stone dead this very afternoon. He has that power. All he has to do is to stand up and say that this government was elected on a specific election manifesto to give the British people a referendum on this constitutional treaty, and that as such, given that they've broken their promise, he will not recognise the legitimacy of the Lisbon Treaty until the British people have been asked that question. If he did it, it would kill Lisbon, because what it would do, it would strengthen the arm of the Polish president, who's currently battling it. It would strengthen the arm of the majority at the moment of members of parliament in the Czech parliament. It would strengthen the arm of the Irish to resist having to be asked to vote again. And some of you may have seen today's news that the Eurosceptics, albeit one's way to the right politically from us in this room, but the Eurosceptics in Austria scored 30% of the vote yesterday. Mr Cameron could kill this treaty stone dead. He just refuses to do so. And he goes on, day after day, concealing the truth. I watched him on Mar yesterday. I watched George Osborne this morning on BBC Breakfast, talking about the credit crunch, talking about financial regulation. I mean, pretending that if they're in government, they will actually have a say over the city, how the city is regulated. They won't. We've given that away. And what Osborne didn't tell you this morning, and I'm sorry that Dan and Roger aren't here this afternoon because they were the two exceptions, what they're not telling you, and please go back into that conference hall and do ask these questions, what they're not telling you is that last Tuesday, the Conservative Party in Brussels was whipped, three-line whipped, to vote for a report by a guy called Rasmussen, who was a former socialist Prime Minister of Denmark, a man who told me to my face a couple of years ago that his intention was to close down the Anglo-Saxon city of London. Conservative MEPs last week were whipped to vote for his report, begging the European Commission to introduce fresh legislation to govern the hedge fund industry. So where's the truth with Cameron? Where's the truth with Osborne? This going on, this masquerading that somehow we govern our own financial services sector, we do not. When does he ever stand up and tell you that 75% of the new laws that are made in this country every year aren't made by the men and women we vote for and send to Westminster? They're made by the institutions of the European Union, and even if all 646 MPs voted against any directive or regulation, that wouldn't matter, because European law is superior over British law. I mean, frankly, it seems to me that the choice at the next election is between New Labour and Blue Labour. Frankly, you cannot put a cigarette paper between these party leaders on issues of real substance. Well, you can say rubbish, but look at it. 75% of our laws are made somewhere else, and with this Lisbon Treaty, that percentage can only increase. Now, I think this issue is important, but David Cameron doesn't seem to think it is. In fact, he says we mustn't bang on about Europe. That's what he says, isn't it? Well, as far as I'm concerned, we are talking about the birthright of our children and grandchildren, for them to grow up and live in a country that they can call their own, for them to be able to be a self-governing people, and as far as I'm concerned, we must bang on about Europe as much as we possibly can. And can I just finish by saying that one thing that I've noticed, and it's in the Conservative Party, and it's in the Labour Party, and it's in the Bruges Group, and it's certainly in UKIP, is we've been quite good over the last 10 years, 15 years perhaps, at telling people what's wrong with the EU, how bad the EU is. But what we all need to recognise is this remarkable phenomenon that between the 18 to 30-year-olds out there, there are more people rejecting the European model than in the older age groups. And that for us to get those people excited, for us to get those people on board, what we've all got to do is to start being a bit more positive. Let's start talking about Britain free to make her own trade deals with any country she chooses on the globe in a modern 21st century global economy. Let's start talking about the benefits of having our democracy back. Let's start talking about how much more self-confident we'll feel when once again we're the masters of our own house. Thank you.